Well, I'm glad that we got one regular episode in here, one positive episode where we could talk about the team in a somewhat kind light, no matter how short-lived it may have been.
Yeah, one positive one about this entire season. So at least we had 1 week of happiness.
Couldn't enjoy it for too long. They just had to go break our hearts and lose two of the next three in the biggest homestand of the entire season. So,
Who would have seen that come?
who? Not me. Not me.
Nope.
And yet, here we are, uh, recording once again. And I know JP just loves to talk about them in a negative light. He just lives for these.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this episode.
Well, in any case, welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Sabre Roundtable. My name is Jonah.
And I'm JP.
And as always, we will be talking to you about all things Buffalo Sabres hockey and maybe even some other stuff in the hockey world today. We'll see where this team takes us. But to quickly recap what's happened since last recording, the Sabres have played 3 games during their biggest homestand of the season. They've gone 1-2 in those 3 games. A loss against Seattle, a win against Ottawa, and then another loss against the Vancouver Canucks, all at home. So if we want to jump right into things, I guess we can start with the Seattle game. I was there, and it once again kind of blurred together all of the very, very uninspiring, bad home performances that have stretched across, I would say, this entire season, but it goes beyond that. It goes back to last season, and it's becoming tiring, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't get. They always say how they want the fans to come back and they want fans in the building, and yet they are awful at home and they never show up at home. They only play good on the road. It's a repetitive thing, and it's like they've been asked about what's the issue before, and they say the same stuff. They say it's all mentality and that they'll get through it, but nothing's changed. It's the same Sabres, and they are awful at home. And there's a reason why no one wants to buy tickets to go to the game, or why season ticket holders are probably going to get rid of their tickets next year. You go to the game and you don't even enjoy it.
That makes them 0-5 against the Seattle Kraken all time. They have
Yep.
still not beaten that damn franchise. And if only Christian were here, he would I think he would have a lot more to say about how angry he is about that.
Yeah, he had a lot to say that night. He was going on rants about their jerseys and all this stuff in our group chat.
I can't get on board with that. I don't know what he's got against those jerseys.
I
I
know
think I think their road ones especially are awesome.
I like their jerseys a lot. I like the teal, and he was basically saying that they're like worse than the NHL and that they're ugly, and we're like, what are you talking about? And then one of his top jerseys was the Blackhawks, and we're like,
What was the
we're
one
gonna have
thing?
to do our top jerseys in the off season.
What was the one? He replied to he tweeted out something. He was like, "I'd rather." What did he say? I'd buy it. This is what he said. He said, "I'd buy a Kraken jersey just to burn it.
Hmm.
Garbage color, anyways.
He's he is such
Haymakers,
a hater.
absolutely
He
haymakers being thrown."
them in Vegas.
Yeah, there's a overlapping theme there.
Yep.
But yeah, once again, the Seattle Kraken seemingly just have the Sabres number. It's frustrating as hell. You dive into that game, you think the Sabres are on their way to a win. They come out of the gates flying, dominating the Kraken in shots, dominating possession. Jeff Skinner gets them on the board first off another Casey Middlestat even strength point, primary point. And you're thinking, here we go. this team, maybe this is it. Maybe this is them turning the corner. Maybe they're gonna do something at this homestand. And the Kraken score 2 goals by the end of that period, and they're winning. They're winning the game by the end of that first period. And that's just how this season has gone. And then the Sabres, they actually tie the game early into the second period, and that was it.
Yeah, it was
Seattle,
over after that.
Seattle had the rest of. There was nothing beyond that. No sense of urgency, pressure, offense. Whatever the Sabres came flying out of the gates with in the first period, it was gone. It was gone the rest of the game, and they lose 5-2. And I've neglected to mention so far, in my opinion, the worst Sabres player on the ice that night, it was Devon Levi. He had a rough night.
Yeah, he had a rough one. It might have been his worst game in the NHL. I mean, most of those goals were pretty weak, like they were savable shots.
The Kraken's second goal was not a shot that was meant to go in by Vince Dunn, and somehow he floated it in past Levi. And then, I mean, the Matty Beniers goal, when he scored that, you knew this. It just was it was a bad performance.
Yep.
He let
You
the
could
team
tell he
down.
was frustrated. So, I mean, that's where you're gonna get up and downs with Devon Levi. You know, you could talk about this all you want, but that's how it was gonna be this season. So, and on the other hand, I know we haven't got to it yet, but UPL's been at least playing better. So at least one of our goalies has been playing better. Levi's been like, I feel like every other game, or he plays a bad game, then he plays two really good games, and then he plays a bad game. Like he's very inconsistent. UPL's been a little more consistent, at least these past few weeks.
And staying on Devon Levi, what happened the next day was a bit interesting. So Jeff Merrick goes on his show, and one of his main talking points was about the Sabres, and more specifically, their handling of Devon Levi's first season in the NHL. And it was there were some choice words to say the least. He is not a fan of how they've handled things. Just some quotes here. I'll list them off, and JP, I'll let you give your thoughts first. Quit trying to make this work. It's not going to, and this team is not going anywhere, and all you're going to do is wreck this goalie. End quote. I don't know that there's another general manager that would continue to let this happen. I've had conversations with other teams about what are they doing with Devon Levi? What are they thinking? They're not going through any sort of traditional development model. You know who goes from college to the NHL and stays there? Nobody. Nobody does that, not at that position.
I don't know. It's tough because I might be in the minority, but I think I still did agree with keeping him up. I mean, it's tough because obviously the right development path is probably stick him in the AHL, let him dominate to bring him up. But he was our best goalie down the stretch last year. I mean, he showed that he can hang and that he has the potential to be one of the top goalies in the league. And that was off of, a college season. He was all over the place. And then he comes right into the NHL and he's playing good. So like I don't blame Kevin Adams for keeping him up. It's like Levi showed what he could do. Let's just get him some games. Let's get him some more games and see how it goes. But with that being said, he did really lock himself into this position with having, three goalies in the AHL now. Like it wouldn't be too surprising to say, okay, this rookie goalie coming right out of college, he's not doing the best in the league right now. So we should at least have the option for him to go down in the AHL. And I don't think we have that. I mean, if we sent him down, we'd have, we'd have three goalies. He'd probably bring Comrie back up, who hasn't been too good. And it's just a tough situation all around. So I don't know. I think I'm in the minority where I agreed with it. But it is starting to get questionable. But he'll play an amazing game and everybody will love him. And then, he'll put up a Seattle game. So I don't know. At the same time, just get him games. Let him fight through it. I mean, he's going to have to face adversity at some point, and I guess the season's already over with. So why not, let him fight out his struggles now? And he's going to keep growing. But I don't know. What do you think, Jonah? I think you're on the other end of the spectrum.
A few things can be true all at once. It can be true that he can hang around. It can be true that he might even be the Sabres' best goalie option in the organization. But in my opinion, it doesn't mean that this was what was best for Devon Levi. There's a lot of rookies throughout the league not playing in the NHL that are probably better than a lot of third and fourth liners in their respective organizations. But you don't call them up right away because it's not what's best for them. What reason was there to rush this process with Devon Levi? Everybody was under the assumption that he was going to play in Rochester this season before he signed. And then he signed, then he played some pretty good hockey as a 21-year-old at the most crucial point in the Sabres season last year. And off of that 7-game sample size, they decided that he was going to be their starter going into next season. That's what this was based off of. And I get it. He played great in probably half of his games last season. His first game against the Rangers, the game against the Rangers in Madison Square Garden, the Florida game where he only let up 2 goals to the Panthers. He played really good in most of those games. He also did have a few stinkers that you saw the rookie in him. He let up 6 goals against the Red Wings. He's 21. And he's going to be fine because the pattern this season has been, okay, there's a rough start there. Okay, that's an iffy start. Oh, look, wow, what a good start. And then another, okay, rough start. Then maybe, oh my God, there's another great start. Maybe he steals another game for them. It's up and down, up and down, up and down, which is normal for a 22-year-old goaltender. And I have no issue with that in a vacuum. But unfortunately, the circumstances do not support that. In case you need a reminder, this team is sort of in the middle of quite the playoff drought. And he was the kid that's supposed to bear the weight of the crease on his shoulders. And he's doing just fine given the circumstances of his age and where he's at in his career. But relative to what he needs to be for this team, he's falling short because he's 22 years old. He's 22 years old. He's not a clear-cut starting goalie. He's not even a cut above Luukkonen and Comrie this season. I think like if it's do or die, win or go home, I'm taking him in a game 7 situation. But on the season, his performances really haven't been that much better than Luukkonen and Comrie.
Well, I think you brought it up, and I think the issue that Kevin Adams faced is that, Levi probably is the best goalie in our entire organization right now. So if you're really going into the season saying, this is the year we're going to make the playoffs, and you have your best goalie down in Rochester, I think that kind of sends a message to everybody that we're not trying to win. But that leads in another point that they should have gone out and gotten another goalie. Now, there weren't too many great options out there. I mean, look at Korpisalo for the Sens. I mean, he's literally the worst goaltender in the league right now, at least by expected goals against. But he probably is the best goaltender in our organization. And I think it is tough to have your best goalie down there. Like even when Miller when he was down in the AHL, right? We had Marty, right? He was up. He was our main goalie at the time. I don't know who the backup was, but Marty was a very good goaltender. Like, we don't really have that situation here.
You didn't, but at least you had two goalies with some experience. I don't know. Like, yeah, it's tough because goalies are voodoo and there's only so many good goalies. And by so many, I only mean a handful. But at the same time, everybody saw this coming that he was going to play like a rookie. He has great performances and he has bad performances. And to risk that with how much was at stake with this season, you can do that. I will, you know what? I will say you can do that. But your additions in the offseason cannot be two third pairing defensemen. What did he do to protect Devon Levi from this situation? Nothing other than have faith in Don Granato to change their play style to make them more defensively competent, which they are marginally, but they've thrown away their offense in the process.
Barely. Yeah. Well, I think the other issue is that last year Levi could have gotten away with this because we could outscore our problems. This year we're not doing that. We don't generate offense. So if we had the same team as last year and we were putting up the goals and the offense that we were last year, this probably wouldn't be as big of a conversation. Because, Levi might have a bad night and let up 4 goals, but we're going to score 6 goals and he's still going to get the win and make a few big saves. Now it's like, he let up a big goal. He let up that third goal and the game was over and half the game was still left. So I think it also does lead into just the whole team being the problem and that Levi has some bad games, but the teams don't help him there at all.
I want to make things clear. Goaltending is probably not in the top 3 of the Sabres issues this year. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. But I think Merrick does have a point here right now, especially like this season is it's done. Like it's done, barring a miracle, which I feel like I've been saying that phrase for a good 2 months. It's done. So from here on out, where do you go with him? That's the question. Are you going to continue to let him eat the bullets while this team is not playing good hockey and their injuries are still piling up at a decent rate, especially after the Vancouver game? I don't think we've gotten word on Matej Samuelsson. Are you going to continue to let him eat the bullet here and take the reps just to, I guess, tell your team, like, hey, we still believe that you guys can do it? Are you going to continue to keep doing that? Or are you going to, I don't know, let the guy develop in a natural way with a team that where he should be? I still think he should have been there going back to last season. But fine, like I said, he had that good stretch.
He was the reason we almost made the playoffs.
I just don't understand how they thought that this was going to work. We've been talking about this since what, July 1st? Probably even before that. That this was going to be a huge risk. That if this somehow turned out to be successful, it would be against all odds. It would be against the historical consistency, because there is none for this. There's no precedence. And it's going exactly the way we thought, exactly the way we thought. There's good performances in there, and there's bad performances. He's playing like a rookie. It's going exactly the way anybody would have imagined it. And it's still hurting them. It might be down the totem pole in their list of problems, but it's still hurting them because he's still a negative goaltender by goal save above expected. Or I guess depending on the model. Maybe another one has him positive, but he's barely average. And that's fine. That's honestly promising for a 22-year-old, but it's not helping this team substantially.
Yeah, I think they could really go pretty much one of two ways. They recognize the season's over and they're like, all right, let's just keep getting him reps. Let's have him fight through it. Let's have him fight through the adversity. We know he can do it. And just let him keep cooking up here. Or, they once they finally realize that, yeah, our season's cooked, it is done. You send him down, bring up Comrie, bring up another goalie too if you really want to, just so there's not a logjam down there, and let Levi carry them to playoffs. I actually have no idea how the Amerks are doing if they're even in a playoff spot, but let him go down that playoff run and maybe help them on that. And then he could cook down there, gain a ton of confidence. He'll be facing lesser competition. And then next year, he's up no matter what next year. I think. I mean, you he's gone through all this. He's going to be your guy next year. But I think the only thing that I'm sure Kevin Adams is least thinking about, and really it shouldn't matter. He's a professional goaltender. But if you do send him down, like what message does that send to him? Like, hey, you're part of the problem, so now go down the AHL. Like, I think he deserves to be down there probably. But at the same time, what message are you sending to your top goalie prospect in your organization? But I think that's what they should do. Hopefully, they recognize the season's over sooner than later. And he gets sent down and he could play a ton of games and face some lesser competition.
I think that that is the right path. But here's the corner that they've put themselves in. You send him down, you're waving the white flag on the season. At least to the players, that's what they're thinking. They see this kid go down in the NH or the AHL, they're thinking, okay, so we're done. This is like our admission of defeat. The organization doesn't think we can do it. I still want that to happen. I think he should be in the AHL. I do. At least from this point onwards. But it's going to have a negative connotation on the rest of the roster because they're all going to see it and they're going to think the same thing. This season is cooked. We're out. We're out of the race.
Yep. Yeah, the Amerks are technically in a playoff position right now because they take the top 5 teams from the division and they're fifth. They're not having the best of seasons, but it looks like they should make the playoffs. Let Levi take you down that path and see what happens.
Before we get off the Seattle game, there is one more thing I do want to ask for your opinion on. What did you think about Tage Thompson being demoted to the third line?
I thought that was ridiculous. Um, if he's having a bad game, maybe through a period, like fine. But it was after one shift, and I think the one shift went around, and yeah, he made one bad play. He tried to go in the zone and use his body, and he fell. Like that's literally all that happened. I thought it was ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong, Tage didn't have a good night. I mean, he didn't really do anything with the third line, but I just thought it was wrong to do it right away. Like literally, we're going into the game. Here's what we're prepping, and then after one shift, Tage go down and play with people you haven't played with like all season. I thought it was dumb. I'm not I was saying before the season that I think Mitch should be on the top line and put Tage with other people, but do that going into the game. Don't do it after one shift. I thought it was a wild overreaction after one shift. And the top line didn't even really do much that night. Like no one was on that night. It wasn't just Tage.
What I thought it was initially, because like I said, I was there, it seemed to me he put Middlestead out there for offensive zone faceoff on his strong side, and then Casey dishes it to Skinner, and they score that shift. So that's what I thought it was about. So he was just kind of riding with that. But then after the game, like yeah, he says he saw something at the beginning that he didn't like. What was so bad that you changed out your first line right away? Because you went from 2 lines that were clicking just down to one. Because Middlestat, Greenway, Benson has been clicking. So you totally you neutered your own offense once again. I don't know
It,
why. I don't know why he did that.
it makes no sense because even if Tage is having a bad night, if Tuck and Skinner are having a decent night and Tage could at least get one shot off, that could change the whole game. Like players can have bad games and still put up points. Like that happens all the time. Happens with Skinner all the time. We'll be like, what is he doing? And then he scores a goal and everything's forgiven. Like I couldn't believe that. Like you're putting your best offensive player in a worse situation. It made no sense to me. I don't know.
Well, at least there would be no more questionable lineup decisions as we move on to the Ottawa Senators game. That is sarcasm for a reason, because before that game even began, we got word that Jordan Greenway.
Well, wait, before we get to that, Jeff Skinner got hurt.
Well, yeah, I should preface
So,
it by saying Jeff Skinner goes out of the Seattle Kraken game injured afterwards, and he would not play the corresponding 2 games. So obviously, there's going to be some line shuffling. We get word before the puck even drops against the Senators that Jordan Greenway was going to be playing center that night. The third line center was Zach Benson and Kyle Okposo. What do they have against Peyton Krebs? I will not understand.
I I am it I just out of anybody on the bottom line, who has the most offensive ability? It is Peyton Krebs. He can be a playmaker. He showed it that game. Like he was one of the best players on the ice that game. He had a goal. Everybody was tweeting like he looked really good. Like he proved them wrong. But I just cannot believe that they're gonna put a winger who's almost never played center. I mean, I don't know if he ever played center in the past, but he's always been a winger, and they put him at center over our actual center, Peyton Krebs. And then even the next night, they put Robinson on the third line and keep Greenway there. Like, I think Gergensen has been on a different line. Okposo's been on different lines. Now Robinson's been on the third line, and Krebs has always been stuck on the fourth line. Like, I don't know what they have against him. Out of anybody, where you try to mix stuff up, this guy has offensive ability. If you put him with some scores, he's probably going to get some assists. And they refuse to even try it. Like, I know that he's been a very good fourth liner for him. He has converted his play style to be a good grinder. He's been very good defensively. He's a rat out there, but he could play an elevated role, and they don't even give him a shot. And then when they do give him a shot, like I don't know, maybe last season or early in their season, he played a good game, I think, with like Cousins and Paterka. And then the next game, oh, he's back on the fourth line. Like, let's not mess up our amazing fourth line. It makes no sense to me.
They
I
reunited last night.
yeah, like I covered that game last night. I think I tweeted it about 3 or 4 times that I could not understand it. I'm still not over it. It makes no sense. Like if they're not going to use him and try and elevate his role and see at least what they could get out of him the rest of the season, just get rid of him. I don't care. Get rid of him. They're not using him right. They're wasting his career. He can at least be used in a better situation other than just being stuck with 2 aging veterans to be our fourth line grinders who barely get any minutes anyway. It's mind boggling, really mind boggling. And if they do this the rest of the season, I'm going to be really pissed off.
The funniest thing is you have a failsafe. Zemgus Girgensons has played center so much throughout his career. You can just slide Krebs up and move Girgensons over. That is the most common sense, easiest thing to do. And instead, I don't know if it's galaxy braining or just being stubborn. Why do they view him as only a fourth line player? Why? Why? Why not give him a chance? Look at what happened with Middlestat. I feel like we were in the same spot 2 years ago. Everybody thinks he stinks. Everybody thinks he's useless. They want to throw him on the fourth line. And they gave him more and more chances, and eventually he shined through. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Peyton Krebs, but give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Give him a 10 to 20 game sample size and at least see what he does. And like me and you have been Krebs truthers for a long time. And even the people who usually hate on Krebs and say that he stinks, or even like, why are they not giving him a shot? Like, what is like, just give him a shot. What are you doing, Donnie? Like, he's one of your young players. Like, you want him to develop into a better player, and sticking him down on the fourth line is not going to develop his game anymore.
Mind boggling. Absolutely mind boggling. But, they win the game. So I guess that's all. I guess that's all. I guess that's all that really matters in the end. Peyton Krebs responded, like you said. Nice goal. But like this
It
game,
wasn't even
I can't even feel good about this game. I can't. For a little bit, it looked like they were going to run away. Looked like they were going to take care of business. Story of the game for me, at least, is Tage Thompson looking like Tage Thompson. Two beautiful goals, end rush on one, power play snipe on the other. At least that was. It gave me something. It gave me something to be excited for. And Dylan Cousins putting the spin cycle on, or making Eric Brandstrom look like a ballerina on the ice, spinning him around. That was nice, and it looked like they were going to run away with that game. It looked like they were going to take care of business with a bad team, but they didn't. They let them hang around. Honestly, you could argue Ottawa should have tied it in the third. And yeah, they get the empty netter at the end, but it ends up an uninspiring 5-3 win against one of the worst teams in the NHL, a team that was 1-8 or 1-9 going into their last 10 road games. Like, yeah, it's a fine win. Your big guys showed up for once. It's encouraging, but it doesn't give me anything.
No, they played a really good first two periods, but that third period was an absolute stinker. Like I thought we were gonna lose that game. After they scored those two goals, I was like, yeah, we are toast.
Just no, there's no spark from that win for me. It wasn't like it didn't give me, oh, what a huge bounce back win. That's how you respond after the cracking game. It was just they just beat a team that was worse than them, and that's how I see
Yep.
it. Because to jump on the Senators really quickly, that team is bad. They are in
Yeah,
a
really bad.
rough spot. I don't think many people thought it could have gotten worse after DJ Smith was fired. It's gotten worse. They are bad.
And Forsberg got hurt. I don't know if he's actually hurt any longer, but then Corpusalo came in and let up some. I think he's let up his first two shots for goals. Like it's going rough over there.
Yeah.
But I that's not even the only lineup decision. Isn't that the night where they put Dahlin and Samuelson back together because they lost the game
No, that was the
before?
Seattle game. They reunited them for the third period.
Yep. And then they put them back together. I mean, at least Ryan Johnson's playing, but Yoki Haru's out again. And Donnelly and Samuelson are back together. Hasn't worked all year, but let's try it again. My only thought on that is that Donnie knows that Darlene is struggling, and I think Darlene's probably most comfortable with Sammy because he's played with him the most. So that's probably the thought process, at least. Let's have Darlene be comfortable, and hopefully he'll get back on track. But it hasn't worked all year, so why do you keep doing it?
That's why they're struggling. They're not playing well with each other. It's stubbornness. I don't understand. And that's the funny thing. Yoki Haru goes from playing with Dahlin to being scratched the next game.
He did have a really rough game.
He had a rough game. He had a rough game. I just wish that was consistent with the rest of the roster, because if you use that logic every game, Connor Clifton and Eric Johnson would be set every other game before Yoki Haru or Ryan Johnson. That's my issue. You want to hold guys accountable? That's fine. That's what we all want. That's not what they're doing. That's all I really have to say about the Ottawa game. I guess I thought a few of the goals on Luukkonen were pretty weak. The first one, Tarasenko, that puck never left the ice. Hard to complain because Eric Johnson just didn't feel the need to move the guy right in front of the net. And
our biggest defenseman's not going to do anything there.
And then the Giroux goal in the third period, kind of the same thing. Puck never left the ice, squeaks through.
Yeah. The only other thing I'll say is that our penalty kill did look good, and we did score a power play goal. But with that being said, I think the Senators might have a worse power play than us. Like it was really bad. But I thought our penalty kill has actually been better recently, and that continues into the next game against the Canucks. But the Ottawa Senators, their special teams, they might be worse than ours, which is crazy to say.
It's a high bar.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the Vancouver game, and then we'll just get into the team as a whole from there. So, for a 1-0 loss, there's quite a little bit to talk about. I guess the big story coming out of that game is the NHL officiating continues to be absolutely atrocious.
It's embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing that they got away with 2 elbows and we didn't get a single power play out of it. And Samuelson is probably concussed. They took him out of the game. Dowling, they took him out, and he returned in the game. But that is absolutely embarrassing. We talked about this, what, 2 episodes ago, how the officiating and the NHL just does not protect the players and they let things get out of hand. Like it was getting out of hand, and it led to Eric Johnson getting into a fight, and then he got hurt. Like, how, how many injuries are we going to have this year because someone has to respond and gets into a fight and then they leave the game? Like this is the third or fourth time this year. It's really embarrassing, especially the Dahlin one. Like the Samuelson one, like the guy looked like he was skating by and Samuelson was kind of in his way, but he still did lift his elbow. But the Dahlin one, the ref was there, right there,
He's looking right at it.
looking right at it and nothing. And like I will say, I'm very surprised that Power kind of responded. Like I would have never expected that, but it's not like Power like dropped the gloves or anything. But at least he did something. But Power basically just grabbed onto the guy and got a roughing penalty, and the guy who almost gave Donnelly a concussion also just gets a 2-minute penalty after a review, after like a 5-minute review to determine if they should give him 5 in a game. They only give him a 2, and it's offsetting penalties, because Power grabbing onto him is the same equivalency as getting elbowed in the head. Like absolutely embarrassing. And it got out of hand for a little bit. And even when Stalin came back on the ice, I saw him talking crap to Miller. It was like it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable levels of officiating. And the fact that it went to review and they didn't change a call, it's embarrassing.
So you'd think this would just light a fire and make them come out firing on all cylinders for the rest of the game, right?
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, for a little bit they did respond and they were
I
getting a little more physical, but
I
I mean, it didn't result in anything.
I get it. Okay, given the circumstances, I mean they were playing with 3 defensemen at one point, and they're playing one of the hottest teams in the league. But I'm sorry. You're down 1-0 at home with a good crowd considering the circumstances going on in the city currently, and you're fighting for your playoff lives. And what do you do in the third period? You generate .06 expected goals at 5-on-5. .06.
Yep.
That should not be possible by this roster. .06. I I couldn't believe my first of all, Evolving Wild and Natural Stat Trick both had them at .01 when the game first ended. I really wish that would have held. But don't worry, it bumped up. It bumped up to .06.
Yep. I don't know. I mean, I know you're really upset about the game. I'm not that upset, if I'm being honest. Like Canucks are the second best team in the league right now, and I honestly thought they played a pretty good game. It was pretty much a low event game. Like what there was 40 like 40 45 shots combined. Like Canucks didn't really have that many chances either. I mean, I know we had the one disallowed goal. And you could probably argue that the other goal could have been disallowed. It was kind of like the same one of the same challenges that we had the other night with goaltender interference. Um, and I think we got goalied. Like Demko, he played a good game. He robbed Middlestat on the power play. So I'm not as upset. I mean, I think they played good against one of the best teams in the league, and it was just more of a low event game. And good defense on both sides, but it's still disappointing that we couldn't get at least one goal across in front of that home crowd. And at least you get one goal. I'm not sure Canucks would have scored another goal because it was such a low event game. You're at least getting a point out of this, but I don't know. It's more of the same. They played a good game, but they can't bring it home. They can't get the point.
I don't know. I don't think low event should be in this team's vocabulary, first of
Well,
all, but
I agree with
fine.
that.
If that shot generation is the first or the second period, fine. But you're in the third period fighting for your playoff lives, and that's what you do. It cannot be that difficult to generate against this team. You want to know why everybody jokes about them as the PDO Kings? Because they get outplayed every game and still win. Did the Sabres outplay them yesterday? Outplay.
No, no.
Exactly.
I thought it was honestly it was probably even, but they definitely did not outplay them.
Exactly. They they never do that. It feels like they never outplay the other teams. And even when they do, they still lose. They didn't outplay them. This is a team that you're supposed to outplay them. I know you can look at their standings. You can look at how they're first in the league. I get that. But it's funny that they're there. It's funny because their shooting percentage and team save percentage is absurd. I can give them benefit of the doubt another time when this game took place. Not now. I will not say that they collectively played a good game yesterday. Not after that third period. If that's how you close the game, when you're trying to claw your way back into this race at home in the biggest stretch of the season, I don't care how the previous two periods went. There's no desperation there. There's no will. It's such a frustrating team. I don't understand what happened to this team's offense. It still boggles my mind how it's this bad. It's this bad.
We do know what happened. So let's get into it. I'm gonna have Jonah's about to go off here. So
gloves are off. Gloves are off. Okay, so I read this tweet by Matthew Fairburn at about, I don't know, probably 12:30 at night last night. I was just scrolling, getting tired, getting ready to go to bed. And then this tweet comes across my timeline where it's Matthew Fairburn saying that previously in the week, he talked to Rasmus Dahlin, and the big quote that is gone everywhere for good reason is that Dahlin told him, I can't really jump into rushes right now. I got to have more responsibility and take care of the D zone more. I could not believe my eyes when I read that. I could not believe it.
Kruger is back.
I've read
He's
that
infiltrated.
Quote, I think I read that same quote 50 times when Ralph Kruger was head coach.
Yep.
How have we gotten back to this point where we're telling the guy who we spent 3 years, probably 3 years since Kruger was fired and then onwards, so up until it's about 2.5 years, almost 3 years, telling him not to do that, telling him screw whatever that soccer chairman was filling your head with and just go out there and play. And we're doing this at a point, we're telling him to play more defensive at a point when the team's offense stinks. You just lost 1-0 yesterday. How is that the time? How is that your main takeaway coming out of that game? I mean, I guess the quote was before that game, but still. Who is telling this man that his lack of defense is why this team is struggling? And look, his defense is taking a step back. There's no doubt about that. But I thought it was because he wasn't already engaging offensively enough. How many times has he taken over a game offensively this season? Once or twice, maybe?
Yeah, barely.
Is somebody telling him that how can you look at how he's playing this season and be like, this is the same Dahlin as last year, and we need to stop that. We need to tell him to play more defensive, more principled. I'm at a loss for words thinking about that quote. I cannot believe we've gotten to this point with Don Granato, Mr. Play Your Game, Mr. Go, and we'll figure out the mistakes later.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Is it Kruger's still under contract, isn't he? He's still getting paid by the Sabres.
Probably still paying him.
So maybe he's an advisor, and he was like, Dahlin, you're playing too good. All right, play better defense.
Or
It's
Matt Ellis is like a sleeper agent for him.
yeah, uh, I don't know. It's crazy that we are paying this guy. It's going to be $11 million a year, and they want him to be better defensively than offensively. When his whole trait is that he's one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. Okay, he's probably our second most talented offensive player on our team, other than Tage Thompson, and they're going to take that away from him. I mean, what are you doing? What could you possibly think you're going to get out of that to take everything that you earned last year with how he played to just throw that away and say, don't do that anymore, play better defense? Like that's personally why I think him and Samuelson haven't been as good this year, because Donnelly's trying to play more defense where it's not like I've seen Samuelson go up in the rush a lot more this year. It's probably because Donnelly isn't doing it as much. Like I can't believe that quote. It's crazy. Like we need more offense this year, and he's wanting to play more defense. And like I think it all goes back to Eric Johnson's quote in his first interview as a Buffalo Sabre that this team needs to play more defense. It's like that was the kiss of death. Like we should have known right there.
Flashpoint. It's the flashpoint of this team. From
We should have known
moment
right
onwards,
there. Yep. Let's change a system that was working for us. Okay. Okay. We had a ton of defensive deficiencies last year. Yes, we did, but we could outscore it and it was working for us. Okay. If we played a whole season like we did the last half of the season, we would easily be in the playoffs right now. Yeah. We got rid of that entire system and told all of our best offensive players to play more defense and to cut back from the offense a little. I mean, Tage Thompson was playing Selke-worthy hockey in the beginning of the season, and it was kind of a meme, but he was playing that good defensively, but he wasn't producing as much offensively. Like, why are you telling these offensive talented players to play more defense? I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with telling him to play more defense. But telling your franchise defenseman to not play offense, essentially, there is no way he came to that conclusion by himself.
No.
And if I'm a coach and I read that, I'm going, Rasmus, what are you doing? You're at your best when you're creating offensively.
We're making our team worse by doing that.
To me,
significantly.
It is another clear-cut example of this team not using the analytics staff for the day-to-day operations. There's just no way. This is a player that should have won the Norris last year, and not in an Erik Karlsson way where he was producing so much offensively. No, he was the best defensive player on this. He was one of the most elite defensive players in the NHL on one of the worst defensive teams. There should not have been a message sent to him other than just do it again. Play the exact same way you played last year. And here we are.
And this is why, I said this when we went over our mailbag, and I had a little pushback, but I said, I think most of the season is on the coaches. And this is exactly why. Donnelly is not sitting at that offseason saying, look, I was almost a Norris caliber player. I have to change my game. I need to play more defense and play less offense. It's the coaches. It is the coaches. And I will also throw Eric Johnson into that because his entire mentality this whole season, even when we needed more offense at the beginning of the season, he was saying how we need to play more defense. So I am throwing Eric Johnson into this too. I think his voice has been going the wrong way the entire season, and the coaching staff has been on board with that. And it's mind-boggling. It makes no sense. You have one of the best defensemen in the league, and you're taking away his best talent. It's dumb. It is really dumb and really stubborn. And I also think, okay, Power was very good in the beginning of the season. He has cooled off, I think, a significant amount. He hasn't been as much. He hasn't been as good. I think they're probably giving Power the same exact message, and that's why he hasn't been as good. He has not been contributing offensively. Even last year, when he had his struggles, okay, he was contributing. He was one of the best offensive contributors on a team last year. He was creating plays. He was driving play. Okay, he's not doing that right now. And I think it's the same exact message that they're giving Dahlin. They're telling Power. They're saying, look, you are very talented offensively. That's dial back on that. Play a little more defense. Let's develop that part of your game. It's not what they're good at. Okay, it's not. Stop. Stop with this nonsense. Stop being dumb. Like I was at the game Thursday or Wednesday or whenever the game was with my girlfriend, and I said at one point, I said I think I could coach this team better sometimes. It is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I said that in response to their amazing regroups that they have where guys just stand still in the blue line and do absolutely nothing. Like we haven't touched on that too much, but you tweeted about it. Some of this stuff is just so elementary that it's not that difficult, but it's mind-boggling. Like it blows my mind some of the stuff they're doing this year. It blows my mind, and this is at the tip of it all. And that comment is insane. It's insane. You should not be hearing that out of your franchise player.
Oh man, I wasn't even planning on talking about the regroups.
I want to get into it. Okay, and you could go first because I need to cool off a little. But it
Keep
makes no
going.
sense.
Keep going. Ride the wave.
I played very low level hockey compared to these people. Okay, I know in a regroup, you're supposed to move, you're supposed to skate, you're supposed to give your defense options. Okay, they don't do that. They have two guys sitting on the blue line. Okay, and the defense, they'll go like D to D all the time because no one's open. And then eventually their play is a long pass and then they dump it in. I have never seen a team, especially an NHL team, where people stand still so much, and that's their issue with their power play too. But you could lead that into the regroup too. Like we were such a good transition team last year. It's because people were moving, they were flying, they had these good passes. That's all been thrown out the window again. It's I like I'm not joking when I say I could at least coach a better regroup. Like it's I don't even know what they're telling them. Like, yeah, sit still in the blue line. Like, even if that's not the message, can you at least like drill into them? Like, you should not be doing this. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that might not be the coaches because if a coach is telling them like this is going to be a regroup, I think they shouldn't even have an NHL job. So maybe it is the players and maybe they're just being lazy, but I have seen it the entire year and it makes no sense. No hockey team ever in the history of hockey should be doing that as their regroup. We're talking about the regroup. Like this is crazy. That's talking point right now. We're talking about the Buffalo Sabres regroup.
What a downfall. This should be like the last of the issues you should ever have to bring up with Don Granato. This is Mr. All Offense. This is Mr. Giddy Up and Go. Mr. Go play your game. Play fearless. Don't worry about making mistakes. And he's got them playing this sheltered play style that doesn't play to their strengths. And I do not know what to say anymore.
It's dumb, idiotic, and he's being stubborn. All right, change it up. Go back to last year. I don't even think they can go back to last year.
That's the thing, right? Like we thought for a few games, like here we go. We're gonna get the old Sabres back. They beat the Leafs 9-3. They put up a good performance against the New York Rangers. And then like that was it. That was it. These regroups are still persisting. Their failure to clear the D zone or any attempt that they have to clear the D zone, it's just a flip to center ice.
Yep, that was the reason for all three goals on the Senators game, by the way. Three pathetic attempts to get it out of the zone. That led to 3 goals.
They have, I think they struggle in every end of the ice. Every end. Every end of the ice. They can't break it out. They can't clear the zone. In the neutral zone, they can't regroup for shit. And in the offensive zone, everything is perimeter. Even their rush offense stinks. It's neutered, it's muddled. They struggle in every facet of the game right now and are only carried by, I guess, the high level of talent that they have. We have questions about whether or not this core is even good enough to win. And sometimes I get into like that, I go into that downward spiral. But then I look at the Boston Bruins, who have Charlie Coyle as their first line center, and they're on pace for 114 points. You cannot tell me that this core isn't good enough, at least to break 80 points. We're 42 games in. They're going to hit 76. Could you imagine if they finish with less points than they did in the 21-22 season? They finished with 75 that year. Everybody and their grandmother thought they were going to get Shane Wright that season. And they ended up finishing fifth in the division, outproducing their preseason projections by like 15 points. Could you imagine if they finished lower than that?
I don't even want to.
You don't want to, but look on pace for 76 points. Oh my God. What the hell happened? What the hell happened?
I mean, you're right. There is not a single positive in our entire game right now. Not a single positive. And I really don't want to get into the power play, but I do want to point out against the Canucks, our announcers even said it. Rob Ray, I think, might have pointed out that the Canucks like to pressure the D-men. They like to really pressure Dahlin. So what's the solution to that? Just tell me.
At least move the puck lower. Go low.
Well, you know what? They did go low, but they had 5 guys on the perimeter. They had no one in the middle of the ice when the middle of the ice is completely wide open when they are pressuring the top. They had no one down low. Like even they almost scored with Dahlin. It was a very nice play. Tuck, he went crease to crease. So you have Tuck, who sometimes plays the middle of the ice. You have Middlestat, who sometimes middle of the ice. They were both on opposite sides of the goal line, and that's how they almost scored. I don't want to get into the power play, but that did not sit well with me. It just you could see it. Like we can see it from watching the games, the problems.
Do they have a video team? I know they do because the video team's they've been cooking. I can't.
Yeah, they've been cooking with the challenges.
But do they listen to them?
No.
Like there's people getting paid to do this. I'm not even like questioning their jobs. I'm just like wondering how on earth can you like this persisted throughout his whole tenure. His whole tenure. Honestly, this has been going back to Ralph Kruger, I guess. I don't remember Phil Housley's power play that well. Maybe Dan Bylsma. Maybe Dan Bylsma's Buffalo Sabres power play was the last power play because his last season they finished first in the league. Was that the last power play to truly use all 5 guys in an efficient way? Otherwise, if the answer is yes, you haven't had a good power play in 7 years that doesn't rely on one-timers or doesn't rely on just the perimeter. And we've been saying it since the moment Eichel left. At least Eichel could break that sometimes. My God, Jack Eichel would at least attempt a cross-ice pass. I don't think that Tage Thompson is incapable of making a cross-ice pass, but he's not showing me he's able to do it.
I'll tell you what, Skinner will attempt it, but it's through 3 guys. That's the only time they actually attempt it. Like you're right, they don't really do it successfully. I think they do it sometimes, but they're trying to force. They're like, okay, I'm gonna make this amazing pass, get it through the skates and sticks of 2 different defenders, and then he's gonna have an easy goal. They don't move around. They're so stationary and they don't move the puck around, and they stand still the entire power play. Like even the Kraken game, they had a power play goal. And Greenway was caught out of position just a little. He was pressuring the D-man, and it led to the cross-ice pass, which led to the guy on one of the walls being wide open, and he shot it past Levi. It should have been saved, but it was a cross-ice pass. The guy was wide open, and you just never see that in our power play because there's no movement, there's no flow, there's no puck movement. It's just their entire everything. It's just there's no movement, there's no good flow. It's ugly at every end of the ice.
When you look back at Don Granato's tenure as Sabres head coach, the main thing that he's done well has been player development, and that's good because that's what he was brought in to do. But it feels like at one point or another, every single aspect of this team has struggled in some department of play. The power play has never been good. I don't care about their conversion rate last year. It wasn't good. Their penalty kill has really never been good either. This year, it's just because they've gotten the saves, and even that has started to dwindle. The only thing they had going for them last year was they were a kick-ass off the rush team. They were good at they did their 5v5 play was good. And now that's gone. Now that's gone. What has this coaching staff succeeded in this season? Can you name me one thing?
Um, not as a whole. Not as a whole. You could say Middlestat, maybe Benson, but that's literally it. Like
So in
literally, it's
individual play,
nothing. Yes, individual play, nothing as a team. Absolutely nothing as a team.
which is fine because, like I said, that's what he was brought in to do. When Don Granato was hired, okay, first of all, when he was first hired as interim, nobody gave him a chance. And it was just kind of a perfect storm thing because when he came in after Kruger, he developed some of the younger guys well to the end of that season. Middlestat was playing better, Dahlin was playing better, Cousins was playing better. But nobody thought he was going to stick around because they thought at that point in time Jack and Sam and Risto were going to stay and they were going to hire a big boy head coach. But they didn't because those three wanted out. And Granato was there as someone who had already developed a connection to the younger guys. So it was an easy hire. And he's accomplished exactly what you would have wanted to do. Where would the Sabres be without Don Granato right now? They'd be in a worse place. You wouldn't have Tage Thompson to what he is. You wouldn't have Dylan Cousins to what he is even. Maybe Rasmus Dahlin you wouldn't have. Maybe you wouldn't have Casey Middlestat to what he is. Maybe Jeff Skinner never revives his career. He turned Alex Tuck from a good middle six forward to a top line winger. He's done a lot of good things with individual players. And that's exactly what you wanted. But we have gotten to the point where his style of coaching he can't even get to the playoffs with them. And that feels unfair because one more win goes their way last year and they're in. But here we are this season. He attempted to be proactive in how he's deploying this roster, trying to make a more sustainable brand of hockey, I guess. But everything has gone bad. It's gone bad.
Everything's gone to the shitter. It's just we're a broken team and the coach is messed up and it's time to move on. Time to make some changes before it's too late. It might already be too late, to be honest, but before it gets even later, at least.
I really wanted it to work with him. I really did, at least to get there with him and see how he did. I really would not have thought that it would have gotten to the point where they would have needed to fire him before they ended the drought. I thought he was at least a coach that could get them there. I'm out of answers with him. I'm out of answers with this team, this season. I cannot believe this is where we've come to. January 14th and you're out of the race. basically.
Well, the only little positive is that the other team that we were competing with is doing even worse than us. So
Can't even make fun of
Senators
them
are
though.
projected like
You can't even make fun
no,
of them though.
no, you can't. But they're projected like 10 less points than us, which is crazier to think because they
But
actually did make moves this offseason.
yeah, but you're also projected to finish below the Montreal goddamn Canadiens.
Well, yeah, I know.
And like I get it. They have good goaltending. I don't know, maybe you should have called them in the summer. But still, like you can't finish below that team. And even the Red Wings, they're on pace for 90 points.
Yep.
I cannot believe that we are headed to another one of these seasons. They didn't just take a step back. They didn't go from 90 points to 87. They might not even break 80, and that's insane. Like I know they've dealt with injuries, but
Not
they don't
substantial
des-
injuries.
they don't deserve that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
It has not been that type of injury season.
Hmm.
And like teams have dealt with injuries. I'll never forget the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was the first year after the Stamkos extension, and he was out the entire season. And they nearly pulled off a playoff run with like Jonathan Drouin as their first line center. Like you can go on a run without your best players. You can still do it, or you can at least play inspiring hockey. And even when everybody was healthy, they were better. They weren't fun to watch though. They haven't been fun to watch this year. That's the worst part. It's the worst part. It feels like every game I'm wasting my time watching. And the fact that it feels that way under this coach, under Don Granato of all people, never would have expected that. Never.
These these poor people that drove to the Sabres game last night and then had to probably have an hour drive home depending on where they lived because it's literally a blizzard outside in certain parts of Buffalo depending on where the band is hitting at the time. And people went to that game and filled up that stadium to a pretty good crowd and they put up just a mad performance. And it's yeah, those poor people. Those poor people. I was actually thinking when I started watching the game, it was like nothing here at home. And then like once the game started, started to get really bad. I was like, I am glad I did not go. But there were quite a few people that went and had to watch that and then drive home and probably listen to the post game. And I don't
You
know.
want to talk about the post game? They thought they played good.
I
They were
mean,
satisfied with that They were satisfied with that
I
performance.
yeah, yeah.
And how like this feels like very boomerish, I guess. Like you watched essentially your top pair get concussed, and your coach says like nothing
Yeah.
in the post
I did
game.
notice that. Yep. And even I think even when it happened, it's not like he was going too crazy on the bench. And Dahlin was the only one who kind of said something after the game, but he was like, "It's probably better if I don't speak on it," which is probably right because he probably would get fined. But yeah, that's a good point. Downey didn't really say anything.
I just,
It's time to go.
I, I don't, I just don't even, I don't even know how to approach. Like, I don't know how to approach the rest of the season. Like as my own expectations, do I want them to win? Do I want them to lose? I want like objectively I want the team to win because I do not want to hear losing culture narratives anymore. But it's like myself as a fan, what do I want to what do I want out of this team the rest of the year? Do I want them to spiral for another 2 months and then finish March and April hot? somehow get to 83, 84 points, go into the postseason presser saying we really liked what we saw the last 2 months, and Donnie rolls in the next season as the head coach? Is that what I want? Or do I want them to bottom out so that it'll force their hand?
And then they could have a chance at the draft lottery.
What a mess. What a mess. And guess what? You Kevin Adams, you better hope the Bills go on a lengthy run, because as soon as that wraps itself up, all eyes turn to you. Or at least the remaining eyes, because some people just do not care.
Yep.
What a disappointment. I don't know. I feel like we've rambled on long enough. Probably won't be the last time.
Definitely will not be the last time. Guarantee it.
You think you've moved on. You think you've passed rock bottom, and this isn't rock bottom, but goddamn, this is supposed to be the team to solve things. This is supposed to be your core to run with. And it has just been a failure on every single level. By the GM, by the players, by the goddamn coaches. So just another wasted year. Another wasted year. All right. I think we've gone on long enough for today. Hope everybody that's listening is safe out there. Hopefully the snow hasn't, hopefully the conditions haven't impacted anybody harshly. Hopefully everybody is safe and indoors. But I think other than that, that's going to wrap up this episode. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow us at the Sabre Report, or on Instagram at the Sabre Report. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on TikTok, and get updates for the pod at Sabre Report Pod. Other than that, JP, you got anything to say before we sign off?
Go Bills, big game. Let's take care of business, and we could get Patrick Mahomes at home for the first time in his career. So let's take care of business. They took care of business last week. Let's do it again.
We will see you folks next time. Later, and go Sabres.
Go Sabres.